Why we complicate life is because partly we have been taught by well-meaning people our entire lives that anything worth doing is hard work, right? If it's not hard work, then it's not valuable.
You are your own greatest ally or enemy. Awaken the warrior within you. Take charge of your inner kingdom. Welcome to the Warrior Growth Academy podcast.
Welcome to the Warrior Growth Academy podcast, where we build our mental strength to not only survive, but to thrive in this life. We all have goals, dreams, and somehow, some way, there's a lot of excuses or obstacles that get in our way. Procrastination being one of them. And today, we brought the master of getting through this stage. And he has this ability, incredible, it's a gift, of simplifying something that is at the same time unique and different and complex for each individual, but at the same time that helps us and guides us through this process. Jason, welcome to the podcast.
What's up, bro? Thanks for having me on, man. So I don't think the last time I was with you in person was in another foreign country. It wasn't even here.
Yes, it was.
When was the last time? Was it Estonia? Was the last time I saw you in person?
Indeed, yes.
Wow,
you introduced me coming on stage to do a rap, and you were scared that I will talk shit about you.
I'm still scared that day you did talk shit about me, and I still have no idea. You freestyle in French. I can barely deal with English. What am I supposed to do with that?
Listen, you are, now I can confirm, on my right side.
Yes.
You're a brother, your family, and maybe I might, give you a little kind of like poke in the bones, out of love.
Family.
But
That's
exactly.
how you mess with family. I get it.
It's a way of showing love at the end of the day.
Well, thank you, bro. Thank you for having me as a part of the family. And now the Warrior Growth Academy family, too.
This is big. This
Stoked.
is big.
I just want to say I'm so excited for you and excited for everybody that's going to be able to get access to all the stuff you've been putting together. I've seen how passionate you are. I've seen all the work you've put in behind the scenes over multiple years to get to this point, and people behind the scenes, people watching this won't know how much went into it, but you are a shining example of the Warrior Growth Academy just in what you've done to put this together, bro.
Thank you, my man. I appreciate you. It's beautiful because not only you are part of the instructors, you're part of the family, you're part of the movement, but also you were part of kind of the whole process, because I was having sessions with you and you were guiding me through all the, I don't want to say necessarily just doubts, because I don't think I had doubts necessarily, but for sure through challenges and through questioning and through, understanding. Is there any particular things that you remember of that process of me, kind of coming to this idea and trying? Is there anything that kind of hit you?
Yeah, I mean, there are several things that I remember. Actually, one of the things is I remember just the financial part, the financing part, really figuring this stuff out.
Yeah.
It took you a lot of, you did a lot, bro. And I remember coming to sessions with you and you telling me all the stuff you had done since the last time we talked. And I needed a nap. I was just I can't believe that you've put but that was, to me, that was the proof of just how passionate you were about bringing this thing to life. That it's even things that have nothing to do with what you're passionate about. You're passionate about the wisdom exchange. You're passionate about growth, about learning. You're not passionate about filling out forms for freaking finance stuff.
Hell no.
But you know that there's a connection. You can't be of service in the way you want to be of service unless you do these mundane things that you don't really love doing. And so to watch you in that process of saying, this part sucks and I'm going to embrace it fully because it's the only way I'm going to get to bring my vision to life, that always stuck out to me, man.
I love it. And I need to say, you brought me a lot of very tangible tips through those sessions. And one, I know the one that stuck with me 100% for life, not only just in that time, was the time that I told you that I had a hard time to commit to myself, to the moments of either personal work or even personal rest, because I was someone that, one, was driven, but also I wanted to be, there for other people. So as soon as someone was asking me for some help for whatever it is, I was putting aside all the things that I, for example, scheduled for myself. And then I told you just kind of for fun that I had those little mentors, right? The collection of mentors. And you're like, hey, how about you schedule a meeting with Tupac? How about you schedule a meeting with Michael Jordan? You're not going to let them down, won't you? And I was like, man, this is genius. So I want to know, because this is your true gift, I believe, amongst many others, but how do you come up with this kind of system or way of simplifying what's complex? Like, do you have a certain way? Do you have a certain system? Is it just like a gift that comes through your soul? Like, how does it work? Because this is incredible, and I've seen it like so many times. It's not random.
Yeah. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Thanks for that reflection. And yeah, I really, truly always want to try my best to bring things from like high level to eye level. Right? It's one thing for something to be like a big concept. You've heard it a million times. Maybe you've even like read about it or tried it on your own, but something doesn't fully land yet. And I guess for me, I had gone through so many teachers and books and all these things of realizing that there are some people who I really resonate with, and they may not even be that great of a teacher, but like there's just something about their energy I really resonate with, and then others that I didn't resonate with as much. And I also noticed that beyond energy of the person, it was the simplicity with which they shared the message, right? The people that want to make it more complex are typically coming from a place of ego of like, I need to show you how smart I am.
Yeah.
And I want to be the opposite. Like, this needs to be so like dumbified that I can figure it out.
Yeah.
And if I can figure it out, then anybody can figure it out. And so I think that was one thing, is just recognizing that simplicity is going to be the key to be able to retain, to absorb, to execute on that. And then also, the second part to this is bringing the fun into it, like bringing more playfulness into it. Yeah. And so like this whole thing about like the mentors and, the little figures and all that stuff, it's just a way for us to get out of our own head of the self-imposed seriousness that we put on things and just have more fun with it. So I'm always looking out for ways, like if this was going to be turned into a game, right? Like if Parker Brothers or any of these big game companies came to me and said, hey, this thing about like, procrastination, we need to turn it into a game that the masses will buy. What should the game look like? Like, I would love that. That would be the greatest thing ever. So I'm always trying to think of that. So when you told me what you were kind of struggling with and like wanting to have a better system, I was thinking, well, what could be a fun way to do this? Because if I give you a not fun system, you may not stick with it. If I give you a fun one, it's easier to stick with.
I love it. Where does that come from? Like your will and that passion for play while also being productive and while being, I don't want to say serious, but doing serious things, meaning like, a project, a business, work, right? It's quote unquote serious things. But where does that playfulness, how did you discover and kind of connected those two?
Well, I mean, I think for me, it was actually it was an insecurity that led to it, right? So from a very young age, being the chunky kid and then being the fat kid and like all this stuff, you get made fun of a lot, right? Like, and kids don't know any better. I mean, I hated them all when I was in school with them, but now I look back and I go, they were trying their best. They didn't know any better. But it sucks in the moment when you're dealing with it. And so I figured out that the only way that I could get through the bullying was to make people laugh, to make people have fun, right? And so what started off as me cultivating this gift of like humor and levity and jokes and playfulness as a way to protect myself, right? It was very much a self-preservation thing. It then turned into, it was kind of a shadow in the beginning of like, I don't feel like I'm enough, so I'm going to make people laugh and then I'll feel like I'm enough. And it went from being a shadow to being a gift, because now I realize that in teaching or in speaking or in coaching or whatever, if people can feel lighter, they're going to level up. Like I say, you have to lighten up to level up, right? Like that really happens. And so I think just the cultivation of a playful attitude in the times of my life where I felt super insecure was where it started. And now I've thankfully been able to turn that into something that's valuable to other people and not just me.
Absolutely. Is that correlated with your concept of breaking out of jail?
Yeah, I mean, it's this whole self-imposed prison thing. Like so my book Prison Break, it's all about this distinction between being a self-leader and being a prisoner of circumstance. And this came to me because it's the way I lived the first 30 years of my life, kind of on autopilot, being a prisoner, meaning that the circumstances of what was happening outside of my life are what dictated how I would feel inside of my life. And it wasn't until I really started diving into personal growth, which was in 2009. So I was in my late 20s. I was almost 30 years old before I even cracked one of these books to begin with. So if anybody's feeling like, I should have gotten started when I was 16, like all the, the Gen Z people out there that are reading Think and Grow Rich when they're like 4 years old, if you didn't start back then, it's okay. You can start whenever. And so that was kind of my foray into it, and just wanting to grow, wanting to expand, and wanting to have more fun with life, man.
I love it. Was there like a catalyst moment, like a click, a moment that you wanted to change your life because you were, I know you've been through, ups and downs, I think, as any human being, obviously. But was there a moment that you started to bringing more playfulness to, following your dreams and your projects? Like, what was that magical moment?
I mean, I think the playful attitude's always there. The challenge becomes when I want to do something that feels more significant in my life, like it's a bigger deal. The stakes are higher. It's a big dream, however you would call it. It feels like a bigger deal than like picking out what I'm going to have for dinner, right? Like it feels like a bigger thing. It was harder for me to access the playfulness around those bigger things, right? Where I could have playfulness around figuring out what I'm going to eat for dinner, or I'm just hanging out with friends and making them laugh, no problem, it's fine. But as soon as there was something I wanted to create, I wanted to accomplish, my playfulness went away and it was all seriousness, right? And I was like, oh my God, you got to get this right. You can't fail. If you get it wrong, then it's like catastrophe. And like the playfulness is completely gone. And so it really wasn't until I started getting coached by my first real coach, Steve Chandler, who obviously I know you know as well. And he was the one that really introduced me to the fact, it was actually him and Marie Forleo, that introduced me to the fact that it's okay to play even in things that feel serious, right? It doesn't have to be something where only playful things are allowed to have your playfulness. Sometimes even better is that bringing your playfulness to the quote serious stuff actually allows you to be more creative. And I found this out actually, and I didn't realize this until reflecting later on. When I was in grad school, I had one professor and he was like the most popular professor. He was like the young guy, and all the women loved him, and he's a really, really cool guy, but also a great professor. And anytime we would come into class, he would always have some funny video playing on YouTube when we walked in. And I just thought it was like, he likes funny YouTube videos, so he's just playing funny YouTube videos, fine. I like it, I like funny YouTube videos. And one day I asked him after class, I'm like, I'm just curious, like what's up with the YouTube video thing? He said, when people are happy and they're in a good mood and they're feeling joyful, they learn better, they retain better, they absorb better. And so he knew that like there was actual science behind the fact that if you can be lighter, you will be able to do more. And so that became the quest of like, how do I start integrating more of that into my own life in the moments where it feels very serious?
Amazing. And I think it ties perfectly, it's not like exactly the same thing, but it ties perfectly to the concept of being in flow, right? So it's really, the goal of flow is to perform at your highest level, mentally or physically, depending on what you're doing. And kind of one of the key ingredients into accessing flow is to not have expectations, be in the moment, have an environment that kind of lets you be in a little bubble so you can kind of play without thinking, I need to have this done within 20 minutes, right? Because then you're restraining flow. So literally, if you want to get creative, if you want to access your higher performing, brain and whole system, it's the same rules. So it's literally, okay, obviously it's done around the context of something you want to accomplish. So it's a little bit more like serious, we could say. I don't think the ingredients for being in flow is like, watching a funny YouTube video before or, jumping around and dancing the polka. But the same principles apply, meaning it's kind of a mental state. There's also emotional kind of connection to what you're doing. So all those things align. So it's beautiful because it's kind of, at the end of the day, it's very simple principles, right?
Yep.
But why do people complicate life in general, this and life?
Yeah, we could do a whole other show just figuring. I have no answer for that. Why do we complicate life? I mean, I think what it comes down to is why we complicate life is because partly we have been taught by well-meaning people our entire lives that anything worth doing is hard work. Right? If it's not hard work, then it's not valuable. And that works against us in a lot of ways because it can also work against us in if you have a natural gift for something, but you think it's like, oh, what's the big deal? Then you don't double down on that gift. And then you'll live the entire rest of your life saying, oh, I'm still trying to find my thing. I'm still trying to find my thing. It's like, no, you're not giving yourself permission to allow the thing that's already shown up to be the thing because, I didn't work hard for that. It doesn't take me a lot to bring people joy. It doesn't take me a lot to make people laugh. So it must not be valuable. Right? So that's the first thing is like if it has to be hard to be valuable, then we have to complicate life because otherwise whatever we're doing is not valuable. The other thing here is that it's very much a game of subtraction. And that's the other thing that's kind of a challenge in today's world, and it's also a challenge in the personal growth world, is that we keep being taught there's more that we need to add, right? We need to do more, we need to know more. It's always about adding knowledge to knowledge, adding experience to experience. It's always about adding. And there is a time to learn and to add new skills. But there's also a time to subtract, right? To get rid of the distractions, to clear the playing field. And oftentimes, flow is what's left over when we just clear the distractions. It's not even something we need to get into. It's something we need to stop ourselves from not allowing ourselves to step into, right? And so that's part of the playfulness, is like, it's the removal of seriousness. And this is about, when you talk about thinking about why you're doing what you're doing, it's a shift from ego into service. Like, when you can do those kinds of things, when you can say, you know what, I'm not going to be serious, I'm going to be sincere, right? I'm going to care about what I'm doing. I'm not going to just be flippant and aimless, but I'm going to be sincere, but I'm not going to be serious. I'm going to focus on service. I'm not going to focus on my ego. And so just the kind of subtraction of some of these distractions, this is like, if you look at the word distraction, it's literally dis and traction, right? So if traction is you making forward movement, dis is the undoing of traction, right? So distraction is literally undoing the traction you've made. If you want to make sure that you're continuing to be consistent, get rid of anything that would take you away from your traction.
Absolutely. And I love visual representations of anything, why I had the figurines for the mentors, etc. And I think it ties perfectly with the quote that Michelangelo said. I think someone asked him, like, how did you do this sculpture? And he simply says, the sculpture was already there. I simply removed the pieces that were hiding it.
Yeah. I removed everything that wasn't David.
Exactly.
And that's it. And David's just been there all along. So yeah, I agree with you, man, 100%.
Amazing. Coming back to the simple concepts, one of the golden chicken nuggets that you dropped in your
Sorry,
class.
vegans. Sorry if any vegans are watching.
No, it is a vegan also. There's two options. There's the vegan golden chicken nugget, and there's the dairy-free golden chicken nugget, and there's also gluten-free golden chicken nugget, and there's also just regular carnivore golden chicken nugget.
I'll take the last one. Yeah.
Perfect. Me too. Same. So one of the golden chicken nuggets, all kinds, that you dropped in your class, one of, I think, 10,000, because I just stopped counting, so it's an approximative estimation, was a house party. And like, even just the name, and like, obviously we're talking about, emotions and going from procrastination to action. Like, first of all, how did you think of that concept? And also, can you please explain it for those who didn't yet hear it because they didn't took that class? So I don't know what they're waiting for.
What's wrong with you?
One thing at the time.
One thing at a time. Well, yeah, it's a metaphor and it's a visualization on how to navigate the distractions, right? So we were talking about distractions a second ago, to navigate the distractions. And these particular distractions are not the Facebook or Instagram or TikTok variety. It's the between your ears variety, right? It's the self-talk, it's the emotions, all that stuff. And so I think what is pretty common with most of us as humans is, if we feel an emotion we don't like, and I don't want to call them good emotions versus bad emotions, but if we call them, let's say, comfortable versus uncomfortable emotions, that when we experience the uncomfortable emotions, like anything that revolves around discomfort, we try to get out of it, right? So like, I'm very comfortable on this couch, but like, if my leg was like feeling weird and there was discomfort, immediately I'm moving my leg to get back to a place of comfort. So it makes sense that we say, oh, we have this feeling, or I have this fear, oh, I gotta get rid of this fear, or I have this procrastination, I gotta get rid of this procrastination. And it's just this like feeling of like, I need to get rid of this thing. And then we are surprised when that thing sticks around, right? And it's because we're focusing on it, right? It's like, it wants to go, but we grab it and bring it back. And I call that having a DNR on your emotions. And what that means is, at least here in the States, if you have something on your medical records that is a DNR, DNR stands for do not resuscitate. So if you were to flatline on the table, and a lot of times it's for religious reasons or things like that, if they look at your chart and it says DNR, that means they can't use the paddles to zap you back to life, because you have said, if I go, you need to just let me go. Do not resuscitate, right? Well, the same thing happens with our emotions. Their emotions come in, they do whatever they want to do, they want to leave, and we're like, no, you're not going yet, zap. And like, they want to die, they want to go off, but we zap them and bring them back to life, right? So this party analogy, this party metaphor is, imagine you've thrown a party, right? Like a house party in your own house. You've invited all of your friends, but let's say your friends are represented by different emotions, right? So you have your best friend joy, and your second best friend happiness, and another one of your friends enthusiasm and creativity, and all your friends are all there, right? At some point during the night, you guys are all enjoying yourselves, having the best time ever. You hear a knock at the door. Surprise. Oh, who's here? You go to the front door, you open it up, fear.
God damn it.
Fear showed up to the party.
God damn it.
Fear is always, what the hell? So my first thought is, oh my God, who did somebody forward the invite to him? Like I never invited him, I never wanted him here. But you have a couple choices of what you do here. Number one, you can get really pissed off, right? I can't believe fear is here. I'm so sick of fear. I've got to get rid of fear. Fear cannot be here. And you slam the door in fear's face and you say, okay, I got rid of fear. But then the entire rest of the night, you're just thinking about fear. And you go to hang out with your friends, but now you're not even paying attention to what your friends are saying because you're still thinking about fear. So it really didn't help much to get upset with fear, to get upset with that uncomfortable emotion. But the other option here is you can say, oh, fear, hey, you're here. Cool. Well, come on in. Snacks and drinks are over here. I'm just going to be talking to a few people. Maybe we'll catch up later on, but like enjoy yourself, right? And fear goes and does its thing. Now, after a while, you don't go talk to fear. You know fear's at the party. You've invited fear in. You even told fear where the snacks and the drinks were. But now you're hanging out with your friends. And even though you're aware that fear is there, you're not engaging with fear. You're not overly identifying with fear. And at some point, fear says, why am I at this stupid party? Nobody's paying attention to me, and just kind of sneaks out without anybody knowing, and it's gone, right? And so if we can get in this practice of welcoming in the uncomfortable emotions instead of immediately trying to push them out and resist them, if we can be more in the flow of life, if we can say yes to the things that are happening in our lives and not no, everything changes. Because the only reason that we have a bad experience is because we say no to that experience. Right? The acceptance of a negative experience is a positive experience, right? But you have to accept that negative experience for it to be a positive experience. The rejection of a positive experience is a negative experience. So if I were to come up and give you $10,000 and I say, is that a positive experience or a negative experience? You go, it's a positive experience, of course. Well, that's because you said yes to the $10,000. If I try to give you $10,000 and you say, no, I do not want that, I am adamant, I do not like money, well, now this positive experience was a negative experience because you said no to it. And so it's just a matter of being really aware, where am I saying no to life where maybe I just need to say yes?
I love it. And it's a beautiful kind of connection, I would say, or similar also approach that I've heard from my archetype coach. And it's beautiful how obviously this is all, it ties into psychology of human behavior and thinking. But basically what she explained to me is that, archetypes, right? So the concept of kind of universal traits put kind of into those concepts of, warrior, king, lover, magician, and there's a bunch of others. And there's also a very known concept of the shadow and the light, of whether we're talking about archetypes, and I think it comes initially from the archetype concept, but it's also used in general, in personal development as like your light and also your shadow. And basically, she gave me, I think on my first session, the beautiful image that your light and shadow are like two wolves, and you are in your little cabin in the woods, and they're both outside, and they want to get in, right? And you open up the door, and most of the people just want to let in the light. That's the good part. That's when I'm at my best. That's when I'm doing good. That's when I'm feeling joy, whatever, however we want to look at it. But the shadow, we want to let it outside, right? The dark part, we want to let it outside. But what happens if you let in one wolf inside, right? It's very cold outside. There's no food. Inside, it's hot and there's food. You let in the light wolf, your light side, but you leave the dark outside. After a few days, that dark wolf, that shadow wolf, gets hungrier and hungrier and colder and colder. And at some point, you even without realizing, the door will open, or you will have to open the door, and that wolf will be desperate because you kept it there. Whereas when you let both in and you accept both, because we're human beings, each of our traits have a shadow and a light side. Someone who's driven, a warrior, can very well be the person picking up fights in the bar because he or she wants to prove that they are the strongest, that they run this place. And you can use the same energy. It's not a different part of your brain or your personality. It's the same energy. It's that energy that quote unquote fights, literally or metaphorically, and you can use it to start a business, to push through the challenges of life. But that only can happen when you let both wolves in, right? And you accept both, And then when you have those two wolves with you, only then you can choose. You can only choose when you have options. If you want to have only one option, it's not a choice. But then the other one will creep without you choosing it and without accepting it, right?
Man, that's powerful. That's really, really true. That's
Yeah.
really, really powerful. How has it been for you to be able to kind of welcome in these kind of uncomfortable emotions? Have you had some practices around that have been helpful, or like what works for you on that?
Man, good question. I think I'm kind of making this up on the fly, right? But I would say, first of all, I come in kind of a different chapter of my life from a world more of toxic people and environment, more violence, more even toxic me with myself. So I think what happened is when I started to work on myself and better myself, initially I was so excited about the journey, I don't even think there was any, most of the time, not that I can remember, any, kind of bursts of kind of negativity because I was so excited and focused on the growth. And I remember the first time I saw that the work was working was, I don't know, maybe after a year of, reading a few books and watching a few videos and kind of rewiring my programs and my brain. I was driving and someone literally like cut me through and he gave me the finger. I saw his face insulting me and I literally didn't even react. Whereas I was coming from a place of like, I want to prove to you that I'm the baddest and I'm the more scary dude and I'll come and show you that you shouldn't show me the finger, blah, blah. And I saw my initial and natural reaction being a calm and happy one. And I was like, wow, that's incredible. So then, all that to say is that that was really in the beginning. And then obviously, as the more I gained also and practice awareness of myself, of course, as any human being, I had some days that I was down. And honestly, I just flow through it. But one thing that I will say, especially if it's something very intense, I always give myself time to live through the emotion, but there's like a time limit. So for example, one day, and I'll try to not get into too much details, but bottom line, when I was launching my first business, one day in the same week, I've learned that the $5,000 that I invested in some new gear to buy for the business was most probably not even working. I wasn't sure yet, but I discovered that the person that sold me the gear was like a crook. Like there was documentaries on TV about him, like 50 people were chasing him in court because he sold them machines that didn't work. So like, I mean, man, I just spent $5,000 with him. The chances that this thing works is very slim. Right. The same week, I lost the location of my business that I was renovating already for 2 months, but I didn't yet sign the lease. So the guy just literally texted me. He's like, hey, listen, you cannot stay. And I already like repainted all the walls, installed some stuff. And I lost $15,000 grant that was tied to the address of that business. So the people that gave me that grant, since I didn't have the lease, they told me explicitly, listen, we'll send you the check. I just cashed in the check. But if ever you're not staying there and we'll come check, if you don't have that location, you have to give back the money. So that literally hit like within 3 days, the same week, a month before launching the business. And it was like creating an app for iPhones and, iPads and a website like with all the e-commerce. That was years before like, not Spotify, but Shopify, all those systems. So it was complex. I paid developers and everything. And that night, I bursted kind of out of tears of anger. And I'm like, now I'm letting it all in. Tomorrow morning, I wake up and I find a solution and I'm moving forward. I'm not staying here because this will not create a solution, being in this emotion of anger, despair, whatever it is. So I think, just flowing through it, but then at the same time kind of having some rules. I think that helps me and helped me in the past. How about you?
That. No, I love that, man. I love setting the time limit on that, and so you allow yourself to feel it, but it doesn't go on endlessly. And that's, I mean, that's something that shows up a lot even in procrastination. Is we all know whether or not we just need to rest and take some time versus we're being lazy or we're just procrastinating because we're afraid or whatever else. Like, we know those things.
Yeah.
And so for you to do that, you're basically saying to yourself, like, yes, I'm going to let myself feel this, but I'm not going to let it then turn into an excuse of not being able to move forward because I'm still processing it, right? So, and everybody knows that there's no hard, firm answer for everybody. I mean, you know it yourself, whether you need more time to process something or it's time to move on and you're just holding on to it for whatever reason. Something else I want to point out, though, that you said that I think was really amazing was you said in the beginning when you were working on this thing you were really passionate about, and so you didn't really have a lot of like wobbles and stuff that come up for you, and that actually points to something really interesting, is that if and when you are feeling in alignment and like you know yourself and you trust yourself and you're living in alignment between the values that you say are your values and the values you actually are acting out, and you feel like you're really on purpose with what you're building, it's true, it doesn't occur to you as often to have those kind of uncomfortable emotions, right? It just doesn't. And so it's anybody who is the person who would cut you off in traffic and then, give you the finger and everything else. It's probably somebody, not to project, but it's probably somebody who's not super happy in their own lives, right? There's probably something or multiple somethings out of alignment. Yeah. So I'm just calling that out to say that sometimes just knowing yourself and being true to yourself is a powerful way to not have the negative self-talk come and derail you.
Yeah.
When you really know yourself. And so I think that's beautiful that you experience that.
Absolutely. And I think that's even what you told me one time. You cannot think of two things or experience two emotions at the same time, right? So I don't know if it's a conscious decision or more something like you kind of practice and change, but everyone every single day have potential reasons to be upset. Yep. Guaranteed. Like the smallest, the medium ones, the big ones. And I'm not saying that the goal is to never ever get angry or frustrated or sad, but is it really something that you want to give your attention and spend energy and time on? Is it worth it when someone spills a few drops of coffee on your new white pants? And at the same time, you have other reasons to be happy about. 100%, right? We all have so many sources of either opportunities, excitement, or problems and despair. So again, I think I don't know if it's a decision in the moment, and I would be very curious to know what you think about that and how to start choosing more, quote unquote, the positive flow of life. But 100%, if we look at it technically, it's a decision. This way or this way. Sure, not super cool. I didn't ask for those drop of coffee on my white pants, but I'm about to go work with my friends. I'm about to go work out. I'm about to go home and chill. This is a choice if you think more about this rather than about your pants.
Yeah, no, it's super true. And there's, they've done the research on this. The science shows that, when something triggers you, it stays in your body for 90 seconds, right? So if you are upset for up to 90 seconds, that literally is a potentially biological and physiological reaction to a trigger. Anything past 90 seconds is 100% a choice, according to what this research shows, right? So it doesn't mean that you have to always get triggered if you've done the work and maybe you don't get triggered at all. But if you do get triggered, 90 seconds of that is in your body, everything else is in your mind. And so I think it's also really important, and I'm trying to say this more and more when I'm on podcasts, is that there's not always a cognitive solution to what you're dealing with, right? And there's been far too many people over the years who have been told, you just need to think positively, or you just need to have a better mindset, or whatever else. And there are some people who have trauma, or they have like nervous system dysregulation, and it's not as easy as just thinking their way into being happier. And so I think it's good to notice that, like, part of us allowing ourselves to feel whatever we feel is giving some grace and some respect to the body itself. And this is something I've had to work on a lot. Being that my background was being really overweight, I actually disconnected from everything from the neck down very early on in life. And so when I was going through my own healing journey and all this other stuff, and people would say like, oh, when you get this emotion, where do you feel it in your body? And I'm like, what do you mean, where do I feel it? Like, I feel it in my head, like I'm stressed. But they're like, no, but in your body. And I didn't understand what that meant because I was so disconnected from my body. And so I had to go through the practice of getting more acquainted with my body, feeling my body again. And now one of the things I'll do when I realize I'm in a spot where the cognitive stuff is not working, and especially if I'm working with a client and like I've taught them all the mindset tools, I've taught them different techniques, and it's still, whatever the thing is still kind of plaguing them a bit, that's when I want to switch off of the mind and into the body. And so for me, I have a very, very simple way that I do this because I'm not a somatic expert. I don't know about all this stuff. I just feel like what works for me. And so I do it for me. And if somebody watching this, it works for them, fantastic. Is when I start getting in my head about that stuff or I start getting derailed, I will close my eyes and I will literally just repeat to myself over and over, sensation, not narration. Sensation, not narration. Because the narration is just going to go, right? The voice is speaking, the voice is speaking, and I want to get into the body. And so when I remind myself, sensation, not narration, sensation, not narration, it brings me back into the body and I can actually feel what's going on. And for me, a lot of times it shows up as like in the chest or in the stomach or kind of in between, kind of like middle stomach. I'll feel like this kind of like tense energy. And so when I ask myself that question or when I say to myself, sensation, not narration, and I finally am able to locate that thing in my body, then I'll have a conversation with it and say, hey, just so you know, and this has been really helpful for me, just so you know, you don't have to just stay in this one little part of my body. You can spread out as much as you want. And when I tell it that, I feel these like little like prickles of energy that start going out, and like some will go into my legs, some will go to my arms, but they've all dissipated from that big thing that was in my chest, which means it doesn't actually feel bad anymore. Now it just feels like sensations, like when you rub your fingers together. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not uncomfortable, it's just sensation. And so I just wanted to say all that to say that in case you're somebody who feels like you're practicing all the cognitive stuff and it's not working, don't beat yourself up, because I beat myself up a lot in the past when the cognitive stuff wasn't working. Like, I'm a coach. I should know all these things. I should never have these issues, which is bullshit anyways. And so realizing, hey, sometimes you're not going to fix it with the mind. Sometimes you have to be in the body too.
I love it. See, you've just proven my point that you are the ultimate don of simplifying the complex elements of life and of human experience and bringing simple solutions, very visual, very simple to apply. I love it. The element of, seeing it, feeling it, and letting it dissipate. Yeah.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate it.
Listen, Jason, we could talk for not even hours, days and weeks. I don't know how we would do without, eating. We would probably figure out an IV solution.
I got my diaper on still, so we're good.
Okay.
We're okay.
I don't, and I don't care about the couch, so I can also go on. But I'm truly grateful for you, for your time here, for your time in general, for all the help over the years, for being part of this incredible journey. I wish you and us a lot of success. Make sure to check out. The class is insane. As I mentioned before, over 10,000 golden chicken nuggets of all types for all types of diets, mental diets and physical diets. This class is, I don't even know if there's a better way to explain than just a gift from Jason to humanity. I don't know, listen, I'm getting too much excited, and I've been talking and listening to this guy for years. So imagine how incredible that class is. All that to say, make sure to check it out. Make sure to subscribe to the channel to not miss those insanely incredible conversations. I'll see you at the next one.